Welcome, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Pick Six podcast. It's episode number 4, and I have my friend Drake at Drake's PC with me. And once again, we're going to be answering your questions. We're going to be talking about the hobby, and we're going to be making our picks, I suppose. We're going to have our takes, whatever you want to say, however you want to say it. But either way, happy to be here. And Drake is once again on the road. How you doing, Drake?
DPZ, I'm doing great. It's kind of where in the world is Carmen Sandiego vibes with me lately. I feel like each week I'm in a different city, right? So you never know, like where's Waldo, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, where in the world is Drake, But we can't let it go past when you talk about our hot takes, right? We actually had a comment from a listener about how our takes were so hot that he burned his kid's dinner. So give a big shout out to one of our listeners, Mr. Adam Wheeler, for sending that in, saying that he was listening and he was just so, inspired by what we were talking about that he burned his kid's dinner. So safety first, folks. Don't burn your kid's dinner. Don't burn the kid's house down.
Absolutely. And we've heard you loud and clear. You want to hear us on a podcast. So I'm going to have it up on Apple Podcasts for sure. That's the first platform that will make these podcasts available. So we will push that out as soon as we know. So look for Drake if you got to follow us on Instagram at Drake's_PC and at PC with DPZ on Instagram. And then we'll be able to share with you where you can find the latest episodes. We'll actually backload all the other ones that we've had up, the first 3, and this 4th one will live there too. We'll be sure to share that as soon as they're all ready to go. So Drake, why don't we start off with one of the first questions? Oh, actually, you know what? You have a trivia question. So let's quiz everybody. What's your trivia question?
Yeah, I do. So this week I do happen to be in Elmira, New York, and there's a Heisman Trophy running back who hails from Elmira, New York. He was actually the first African-American Heisman Trophy winner. So drop the name in the comments. Don't go to Google. Just see if you know it. And we'll give a shout out next week to the person who gets it right.
Love it. Okay. Well, let's get into it. What do we got for questions for today's episode?
Well, first I was going to ask you, Dennis, do you have any recent pickups you want to share?
Oh, pickups. I have one card, but it's because it's part of a bigger plan. I've recently decided to set build a PSA 9 1987 Fleer basketball set. So it's weird buying PSA 9 Troy Brown or Tony Browns and Kiki Vanderway cards. I never thought I'd ever buy those cards. I remember all of them as kids, but it's interesting when you start putting together the set because you have to buy some of the most random cards. And some of the most random players are really expensive because there's particular cards in the set that just quality control, they just condition-wise, they were very difficult to get in a mint condition form. So, some of them are a lot. I'm leaving those towards the end, but I started with the stickers, and the first one arrived today, actually, and that is the Charles Barkley, Sir Charles, and it's a PSA 9, as I talked about. That's his sticker. It's a pretty clean-looking card. So that's the first of many that I will be receiving as mail days. How about you?
I love it. It's awesome. So, yes, I'm traveling this week. I don't have my cards with me. So I brought a picture of my card. I think that's like an NFT, right? Is that how that works? Okay.
Yeah.
So anyways, what this is, and hopefully it comes through okay. This is the 1999 Donruss Preferred QBC. This is called Precious Metals.
Yeah.
And so what this is there was a set, and they use different precious metals built into the card. So there's actually a gram of gold that is built into the card. Which I think is really cool. There's only 25 copies of it. And there's other players that are made of like platinum. I think there's a silver version of some players and things like that. And so this was actually a card, like I said, there's 25 copies. That one's a BGS 8.5, which is actually the highest graded. It's actually the only graded by BGS right now. And it's one that had been on my want list for a while. And it actually sat on eBay for a little bit. And it was kind of one of those cards where you're just like, gosh, it's probably worth a little bit less than the ask, but the seller didn't want to, he just listed it as a buy it now. I tried messaging, it didn't work. And finally, I guess I guess not being patient got the best of me. And I was like, I really want that card, right? Because it's one of those cards where, it only sells publicly like once, maybe twice a year. And I was like, hey, people can think what they want about BGS or grading or whatever, but I'm like, hey, this is the highest graded BGS copy. It's a nice example, and for all the people that say that all cards are going to go to zero, a gram of gold today is about $70. So we'll know that, if I melted it down today, at least I have $70 to show for it. So
a gram of gold for $70. Here's Drake hedging his bets out there, buying cards with some gold in it. No, I mean that you truly have a gold card. Wow, how cool is that?
That's true. Like there's such a fascination with gold prisms and gold refractors and things like that. And I love those too. But I mean, when you get a card that actually has gold in it, right? I mean, that's the real thing.
You have a real gold card. You have the true gold card. That's cool. Yeah, I think there is a lot of conversation about cards going to zero and people just getting out while you can and all that. I think some of that is just, focus what you're collecting on things you actually enjoy, things that matter to you. I think you just have to be careful when you're listening to anybody else, whether there's someone that's extremely positive about a certain card, a player, or a set, someone prospecting on a player, someone collecting a player, or cards that maybe are more rare. Do you really like those cards? Do you really want them? My kind of rule of thumb has been, if I still want the card after a few weeks of thinking about it, researching it, then I know I want the card. Since I change my mind so often with cards these days, I'm pretty set with the foundation of my PC of the bigger cards. I feel pretty good about the ones I've got. Be hard to sell. I'm up against it now, so I have to be very, very, very mindful and careful, and I have to really want that card if I'm going to have to move another card to buy another card. So I think that you kind of almost end up in that place anyway if you're smart about it. And we've talked about this in all of our episodes. It's been a common thread. It's just, being mindful of what you buy. Is it something you want to hang on to? So I don't think that necessarily means those cards are going to be worth nothing. There's a serious demand for a lot of these cards. Now, there are a lot of cards out there that may not be worth what we thought they were going to be worth, and maybe people are learning that now, but I think we've already learned that, and people that have been in the hobby and savvy know that now. So, and I think most people that are in the hobby now that are still doing this, still buying and collecting, you're kind of doing it because you love it, because you like having the cards. You enjoy looking at them, pulling them out, sharing them on Instagram, talking about them with other collectors, listening to podcasts and different shows talking about sets and cards, and there's a different draw, and it's not just the money and the investment and all that. But I do think that's a serious piece of it. So when you're buying cards that are worth money, you got to do a lot of that due diligence, and that's on you to do, and no one else. So yeah, just be careful who you're listening to. It just you ultimately have the barometer. You know what you want to spend. You know what you like and enjoy. And if you're in the hobby for a while, I'll tell you, after a few years, you kind of figure it out. You start here, you go here, you go here, and then you end up kind of back where you started for the most part. But sometimes you grow and go, hey, I never thought I'd want a PMG, and I still want to have my PMG of David Robinson. I love that card. It's a really cool card. Will I have it forever? I don't know. But I still really enjoy it. It matters. It's a cool card, and I'd like to hang on to it. So anyway, yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's move on to the topics. So the first topic that we had, and I want to say we appreciate the engagement of folks that are commenting on Instagram stories, sending us direct messages, dropping a comment on YouTube, things like that. But first one is kind of bringing back or resurrecting a topic a little bit in the spirit of Easter, with the resurrection, right? This weekend, we had previously discussed grading or not grading your PC, and we kind of talked about that. But if you do decide to grade your PC or you buy graded cards, what if anything prompts you to want to upgrade a grade on a card? And then when are you just satisfied it says, hey, this is a grade that I have and I'm going to be happy with it through eternity?
Well, it's a great question. I think you run into it when it depends on the card. that's fine. We'll start there. It depends on the card, the rarity of the card, the condition sensitivity. I mean, some cards just have common issues, cuts, print lines, refractor lines, things of that nature. So sometimes embedded with the card, there's an issue that's just as difficult to find a card that doesn't have that particular issue or all those issues. And when you consider all of that, if you have a good eye for grading and looking at your cards and analyzing your cards, you can sometimes just go, okay, this is what this is, or maybe this is generous, or it's undergraded, and I could take a chance at getting it. And I'm right now I'm answering the question if it's already graded, and you want to up the grade, you want to resubmit for a higher grade, then you got to be really sure. The tricky part is if you just send in the card encapsulated in the old slab from another say you're going from BS to PSA. I mean, if you read the blowout forums, if you've studied, you've listened to people, and it seems like it's very difficult to get it to cross to a higher grade. You're taking in human beings that are going to look at it and go, okay, this is BGS. They're going to have their predisposed opinion of whether they're good at grading or not, or maybe they're easier on surface and we're harder on surface. So, the surface is an 8.5. Well, that definitely means it's not going to be high. There's all these different things that factor in. So I would be nervous about, you'd have to break it and crack it and send it in. And then you're taking the chance of it not coming, you're not going to get back the grade you want. You have to crack it, resend it back to another. There's just a lot of that going on. And you just kind of have to go, you know what, this is the grade that this card is, and I'm just going to live with it. Now, if it's a more common card, I think it's easier to just play that game because you never know, because the values can change with those common cards. Common in the sense of, like an 80s card for a player that's, prominent. A 9 is going to get you more than an 8. Hey, or a 9, maybe you can get a 10, and it's going to, the value of the card increases by quite a bit. I can see that there'll be a desire for that. With raw cards, I don't know. I mean, I don't have many raw cards. I like the liquidity of having a graded card. If I decide tomorrow I need to move a card because I need to move it, I can kind of guesstimate as to what I would get for it based off the latest comps. I can send it in and get it, listed at PWCC or wherever. If it's raw, now I have to go grade it. If I need to move it quick, now I have to grade it quickly.
Yep.
Spend money to do that, and then send it. There's just a lot of time there. I feel like having them graded is nice. It just makes it easier to move them if you need to move them.
So just a question for you. What's your favorite card in your collection right now that's not a Gem Mint card, let's say?
I think my Kobe Super Patch. It's 98 Upper Deck.
Okay.
The Super Patch I got from Spinatron.
And that's a grade. What grade is that?
The BGS 9.
BGS 9. Okay. Does a 9.5 exist? Or a PSA 10?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't believe, no.
Well, so kind of where I was going is, let's just say a 9.5 existed for that card. Would you be motivated to try to get that 9.5, or are you happy with that BGS 9?
Again, so I go back to the card. Since the card is numbered out of 24, and there's hardly any of them that even exist, I think I would be content. I'm content. There is 2 9.5s.
Okay.
Yeah, and the value difference between because right now the value on that, the alt value, using alt, 11,209. One sold in 2021 in October for $20,000. The 9.5 value, there hasn't been any transactions on the 9.5 value. They're guessing it's $16,000. $4,000 more. Obviously, I think it would be a lot more based on the demand for that card. I've gotten a lot of requests to sell that card. So lots. The most I've had of any card in my collection since I've posted them online. So no, I don't think I would. I think I'm very happy with a 9 just because of that, the provenance of that card.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, no, it's great. And that's kind of where the topic, I think, just thinking about it, right? And it is something I play in my head a lot. I think like you said, it depends on the rarity of the card, right?
Yeah.
And then I think it also depends on the value difference to upgrade the grade. And does that make sense, right? So, for example, in my own personal collection, so I have a Peyton Manning 98 Star Rubies, and it's in a BGS 8.5.
Yeah.
And that card is numbered out of 35. And my personality, I'm kind of a perfectionist, which is really hard in the hobby because I want everything to be like as nice as possible, but my budget doesn't allow for it sometimes. But I look at it and it's like, okay, well, there's a PSA 9 sitting out there. And so I could sell, or potentially trade that 8.5 to get into PSA 9, but it's probably going to cost me an extra, $5,000, let's say. And when I sit down and I think about it and all that, I'm like, you know what? Like having the card is more important to me than saying, hey, I went from a BGS 8.5 to a PSA 9, which is it's a pop 2, the highest graded. There's no PSA 10s, right? And I would love to do that, but in the back of my mind, I'm just like, I'd rather spend that. We'll just call it $5,000. I'd rather spend that $5,000-6,000 on other cards or on something else than just upgrading the grade because that card is so rare and it is so hard to find. I'm happy with the card.
I guess another way to look at this is what's driving your thought process on grades and wanting the nicer card. If you didn't watch any podcasts or listen to any podcasts, if you weren't on Instagram, you didn't see everybody else's collection, you just knew the values of what cost what, you knew the importance of the card, would you be more satisfied with that 8.5 and not having the 9, having taking all that away, all that potential influence away?
Yeah, I'd say I'd still think the same, right? Because I'm a very competitive person by nature, and not and I mean in some bad, some ways good, right? But it's like, if I know I have something here, but then there's something that's I can achieve that's a little bit better, like I always want to strive for that, right? And we're in the middle of workplace performance review season and things like that. And we're always trying to talk about like how to motivate other people to do better and how to get better and, that sort of stuff. But I think with my collection, I have to take a step back and not think of it like that and say, hey, look, I'm satisfied with what I have. But that doesn't mean that I still can't think through those like what if scenarios, just knowing that something better is out there. And in my mind, I'm like, I want to have the best Peyton Manning collection that I can have, right? So
I find it interesting. I guess we can end with this on this topic. When the first card I bought when I got back into the hobby was I didn't know anything about grading. I was very new. I was an extreme novice. And I bought a BGS 9 Ken Griffey Jr. 89 Upper Deck off Amazon. Mm-hmm. I wasn't even on eBay yet buying stuff. I mean, I had an eBay and I bought a lot of other things on eBay before that, but never cards. The BGS 9, and I was like, this is great. I've got a mint condition card because I was thinking back in the day, mint condition, sweet, I'm set. I don't need anything else. I'm good. It's authentic, so I know it's not fake, and it's a BGS 9. That was before I started learning everything I've learned up to this point. That was before I started watching all these podcasts and these videos, and it was before I dove into the blowout forums. It was before I went to the population, the pop count, the POPUS report for all of these different grading companies and learned that, okay, here's how many there are. It drives the value. Oh, that's why it was only like $80. It was because it was a BGS 9. But okay, what's the PSA 10 cost? Holy cow, it costs $500. I'm not going to spend that. That's insane. Why would anyone spend $500 on a card?
Yep. No,
and that was at the beginning, right? So, and then fast forward to now, and I'm like, oh yeah, but the gem rate is, and you have all this stuff that drives your behavior, that influences you, it drives your behavior. Mm-hmm. It's so interesting to think about. Yep. That's why I posed that question, because I'm like, gosh, if I'd never listened to anything, would I just be happy with some of those PSA 9s and BGS 9s? Because I'm like, well, those are way cheaper than the PSA 10. Why would I get that if it's a 9? And some of the stuff I read was like, there's not that much difference between a 9 and a 10 anyway. It's just an opinion.
Exactly.
You're just paying for that opinion. So the whole thing is actually really interesting. It's built on, I'll say this, and it's probably going to get commented on. I feel like a lot of the grading stuff is built on sand. It's not built on solid foundation. People are spending money based off of something that's an opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. No, it's good. But I think that subjectivity is what makes the hobby fun, and that's what drives us each and every day. As you were talking, I was thinking about, we have a family friend whose father passed away recently. This guy had tons of cards and tons of graded cards and things like that, and so his son was asking me to come and look at it and help him understand it. His old baseball, 50s, 60s, 70s, that kind of stuff, and I was trying to help him understand it and where to go to get values and all this. And he actually called me today on my way from the airport, and he's like, Drake, he goes, just looking through all this stuff, he goes, there's just so much to learn. And he goes, and I'm having a blast doing it. He said, I had no idea, like I knew my dad collected cards, but I didn't know there were so many nuances to it, and this whole sort of thing. And he was telling me that he wants to start actually collecting himself, which I thought was kind of cool. So anyways, just a quick aside.
I like that. That's a great way to tie up that question, or tie off that question. That's a great story. It is fun, and don't get me wrong, it's a blast. Learning about the provenance of a card, a set, I mean, just the whole thing is just so much fun.
It is, absolutely. All right, well, let's go to topic 2. So this one comes from Big Caesar. So Caesar asks, in the case of ultra modern, is color match top priority considering the high print runs in ultra modern?
I would say yes. I really like the 2017 Prizm Jason Tatum green, the Prizm green. I actually like it more than the Prizm itself. Just something about the Celtics, the green, the color. I had a PSA 9 of that for a while. Really cool card. If there's a modern player I'm a fan of basketball-wise, it's Jason Tatum. Just a super cool card. The green on that, it just looks awesome. It just works with him on the card. I think with baseball cards too, you love the blue refractor. If you're a Julio fan for the Mariners, it's just perfect. If you're a Baltimore Orioles fan, you get that orange refractor. I mean, it just doesn't get any better than that. If you're a Braves fan, Acuna, or you got the red refractor with the auto. I mean, those things go for a lot of money. If you're a Pirates fan, go Marco. If you're a Pirates fan, other teams that have gold. I mean, yeah, I think that the color match does. You want to find as many things that differentiate and separate the card, in my opinion, from modern, for it to make sense. Like right now, I have, because I'm a Mariner guy, I've got this Lazaro Montes. You can kind of see it. It's a PSA 10 blue refractor auto out of 150. Now this kid is young. He's still, he's high A ball. It's going to be really good. Could be, they're saying the next Yordan Alvarez. Who knows? It's prospecting. But I picked that thing up for a couple $100. It's selling for $1,000 now. I could actually sell it and make money off on a card for once in my life. But I don't want to. I mean, for me, it's fun because he's a Mariner. But see, I felt like, okay, if I'm going to get his card, out of all the cards that are out there, I'm going to get a refractor and I want to get a color match. The blue refractor matters a lot, depending on what you're talking. If you're talking about baseball and prospecting, blue is a big deal, regardless of the color of the team. But if you can get a blue with a blue team, it just elevates it, right? And my buddy Filmington will have all the data on the multipliers for that. He's got all the data for that. If you check out Filmington, if you haven't yet, go check him out. He's got all that data. Terrific at diving into that. But yeah, color match for sure is a big deal. Anything that differentiates the card. What do you say?
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think you probably answered that a lot better than I can. As someone who isn't really huge into the ultra modern, I just think about like a guy like Drew Brees, who I collect. Anytime you get gold mixed in with the black and gold and white of the Saints and things like that, it's just an awesome combination. But the other thing that comes to mind is, and I think you either like them or you hate them, but I think that like the animal prints, for example, have a place. So say you collect Joe Burrow, right? If you can get like a select Tiger Prizm or something like that, I think those command a premium. But just like you said, I mean, if you're, get a Joe Burrow and you've got some kind of an orange Prizm or, some kind of an orange, or you get into Justin Herbert in the blue, or a Luka Doncic, the light blue, the blue, Nikola Jokic. I mean, we could go on and on for the rest of this show, but I mean, I would say that the color match is a priority. If it's a numbered card, the jersey number certainly adds a premium, as well, things like that. So yeah,
a card our buddy Dustin would love to have. I bet I know exactly what Dustin would love to have, and I'm gonna go find one for him. Like a red refractor, Matt Ryan in a Falcons jersey. A red refractor, Atlanta Falcons, one of the best teams in the NFL. Matt Ryan, what a great quarterback. MVP, went to a Super Bowl. Wow. We should find a red refractor for our buddy Dustin. I think you think you'd like that, Drake?
Well, it's been a great 4 episodes, DPZ. And this is the Pick Six signing off.
Oh, I got 2 big Saints fans in the room here. I got
That's right.
Drake and I'll tell you a story after. I know the kicker, the punter from the outside of your stadium really well.
All right, awesome.
From that Gleason punt.
Yeah.
Got a lot of connections to that whole situation. So we'll talk about that off air. But anyway, yes, I think numbering is important. I think color match is great. Gold refractors is kind of the way to go. I feel like later on down the road, because you got to think about, I'm going to steal from, our friend Cage. He's not wrong in this, though. I don't know if he said this verbatim, but I feel like gold prisms might be a card down the road, because he makes a point of the kids now, when they come back in at our age later, 20 years from now, what are they going to be wanting? I bet you they're going to be nostalgic for gold prisms, gold
100%.
tops, chrome gold. The gold. I think the gold refractors, I think those will carry value. I think those will carry value from cards from the 90s even more, because they'll be like, oh, go back there and get those gold refractors from back then.
Yep.
I don't know, maybe years from now we watch this video and go, wow, we were right. But yeah, I think gold refractors, gold prisms are going to be very, very sought after 20 years from now.
Yep, agreed. I agreed. All right, well, moving on to a topic from Adam, AJM Cards 94. Do you have any standout purchases or trades that helped your collection get to where it is today? And did you use any of that to build any sort of equity in your collection?
Yeah, I sold. It's funny. I've tracked every dime I've spent, and I've probably said this multiple times out loud. I've spent up to this moment every dime I've spent on cards, wax, everything, and I've tracked. It's easy to track for the most part. Private and eBay, my slabs, all the sales I've made, PWCC, everything. Gross, not net. So I guess you take the number and you tack 10% on top of it. But I'm not the gross sale, but after the fees everywhere. But as far as purchase, I've gone gross. But so I've tracked it all, and I'm still, based off of what I've done so far in a vacuum, I am at about, going off alt values. For some cards, I have no idea. There's no value. It's based off 2 or 3 offers that I've received for the card. I figure that number in for the value. But I only have 10 or 11 cards, so it's not that hard to figure out. I'm about 20% return on investment. So I got about 20% equity built into my collection based off of all the moves I've made. Now, what's important here's something you're going to like hearing this, Drake. I've taken losses on a lot of cards. I've just rolled those cards, and I didn't just take the money and go home. I think I just doubled down, and I went and bought the cards I thought had the best chance at growing. And I lucked out and got a handful of them before things started to turn on the cards I got rid of, and the interest started shifting over to the cards I was picking up. And I still moved a bunch of those to get at some cards that just don't sell very often. So it's, again, I think the biggest move I made was moving a lot of my 1980s baseball PSA 10 stuff I had. I had about 30 of those cards. I moved every single one of them. And I moved into the Griffies. I just focused on Griffey. I kind of stopped and went, wait, what was the first card I bought? What was the reason I even collected when I was a kid? What's the reason I even got back into this in the first place? Griffey. Let me go get I joined the Griffey community, and I dove right head first back into Griffey, and I went that direction. And I sold everything off, and I started buying Griffies. And then from there, even I took and shaved off the Griffies that were still more attainable as I learn more and more and more, and upgrade it to the more sought after, rare. And you kind of know you have cards. You kind of know you've settled into the cards that are good to have is when you get a lot of offers for them to sell them, and that makes me feel comfortable having money tied up in those cards. So I don't have one big transaction, but I know I took all of those cards that I thought I would never sell, and I moved them all into all these Griffies.
Yep. Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, there's a few things. Yeah, there's a few things that come to mind, right? So, and I've mentioned before, but I got a LeBron James SP Authentic Rookie Auto. It was a BGS 9.510. I got that in like 2004. And then I picked up a Michael Jordan 86 Fleer BGS 8.5, maybe a couple years after that, just because I wanted the card and I knew it was a LeBron James autograph rookie card. I knew when I was a kid I wanted the 86 Fleer, and I just stuffed them away and didn't think about it, right? And so, then fast forward 15 or so years, right? Things happened with the COVID boom and all that. I was able to sell those. I sold the Jordan for really significantly more than what I paid for it. And then LeBron, I was able to use that to trade into a Rock Gold Prizm PSA 10 and some cash for it. And so without those, I wouldn't have been able to, I guess, get cash from the MJ to then go buy a bunch of Peyton Mannings that I had. And then same thing is when the Rock Gold Prizm came out, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to afford this card just going to buy it, right? And so I was able to leverage those cards. And so I think, I tell that story just that, things like the way the market is now, people are so focused with like, you've got to buy a card with the exit strategy in mind, and you've got to be thinking about like what you're going to do with that card in a month and 6 months and a year, things like that. Like it's a good reminder of it's okay, especially on those cards that of like, great players when you talk in like LeBron and MJ and things like that. It's okay to buy the card and just kind of forget about it for a little while. Right. And not be so focused on the day to day. And is it up this week? Is it down? What does Card Ladder say? Should I buy it? Should I buy more? Should I sell? Things like that. And so I think that's kind of one strength, I guess. It's helped me get equity or build my collection. The other thing I'll say too is, and I actually learned this from my good friend, Brett McGrath, Stacking Slabs, is whenever you're going to sell cards like you mentioned, Dennis, to get into a different card or whatever consolidation, don't look at each card as an individual and say, well, gosh, if I sell this, I'm going to lose this amount of money, or if I sell this one, I'm going to gain this or whatever. Just look at it and say, hey, this card that I want costs X amount of money. And I'm going to go, as Brett says, take your PC to court, and you go through and figure out, based on the values today, if I move those, is that going to give me the amount of cash that I need to go get that other card that I want more? And so I think when you look at everything as like the sum of all the parts to make a whole, your mindset shifts versus getting so focused on like, well, gosh, if I sell this card, I'm going to lose 50% on it, or I'm going to lose 10%, or whatever the case may be. You're using that equity in your PC to move into something else. And I think that's the way you have to look at it.
That's a really good way to look at it. And also we're kind of both ends of the spectrum when it comes to how we curate our collection and all that. But there's two different ways of doing it. You look at the long term, the big picture, as what's happened with me. If I just focus on every card in the loss, I could have just gone, yeah, I'm out of here. I'm just going to liquidate, get out, and go do something else. But I decided not to, and I decided to keep following my passion and narrow it down and focus on what I love and want to just have, and went that direction. Thankfully, it's a player that is very collected, so it worked out for me. But yeah, there's multiple ways of doing it.
Yep,
that's exactly. Great. That was a good question.
Yep. Nope. Thanks. Yeah, thank you to who was that again? That was from Mr. Adam, AGM Cards 94. All right, so we will end on this. This is from 740 Smith Cards, Justin, and this topic was actually something I was thinking about on the plane today. So I'll introduce the question and I'll kind of give just some quick thoughts. But he says we've seen guys like Wander Franco destroy his market through personal decisions, and then there's potential there with Shohei Ohtani with the gambling scandal and all that kind of stuff. And what he wants to know is like, what would the all-time greats such as Michael Jordan, LeBron, Tom Brady, even threw in Griffey and Peyton for us, I think. Like, what would they have to do to make people do a 180 on them, similar to what the market has seemingly done with Franco and Ohtani, things like that? And you think about, Tom Brady, for example, if Deflategate happened today, would there be a massive shift in his market in the way that, has happened with Shohei Ohtani? And then there's been some others, for example. And it's one thing I got to thinking about on the when I was flying today is, I'm really glad I don't collect active players, because there's always that like slim thing where it's like, gosh, they may do something, and maybe it's not a poor personal decision, that goes against our morals and things like that, but they could get into gambling, or they could, say something that's, very divisive or something like that. And people can get really sour on them, very quickly. And so I think, that's part of why I like the guys like Drew Brees and Peyton Manning, who are pretty boring, right? They're not in the news a lot unless they're, unless Peyton's hosting a country award show or, doing Monday Night Football or something like that, but they mostly stay on the sidelines. And that makes me feel better about collecting them. And so that was just something that was going through my mind today as I was flying. There's not going to be the big peaks and valleys and performance related and the hype cycles and all that kind of stuff. But, I sure rest a lot easier knowing that I'm not going to wake up tomorrow, hearing that Peyton is betting on his games, or he's adjusting the air pressure in his footballs. So what do you think, Dennis?
That's a great question. I'm with you. That's why I'm nervous about modern cards and modern players, especially in this day and age of social media and all the things you can say and can't say. Example, Kyrie Irving. You can say some things and it could have a dramatic effect on your market if you're spending good money on a player and they decide to do something really ridiculous. I think with Wander Franco, that's a pretty, you're talking about children. That's just like it's as black and white as there is in life. And for us having children, it's like, nope, there isn't even a conversation. You're done. Gambling, if you're playing, that gets tricky. Is that you're a terrible person? No, I don't know if I go there with gambling. If you're betting on your own team, very poor judgment, but are you a terrible person? No, I think there are people that struggle with gambling, all kinds of different addictions. We have sports betting going on left and right. I think there's a little bit of hypocrisy that goes on there. So I don't know if I go there. Killing, doing terrible things to people. When it comes to hurting other people, abuse, any of those things, murder, yeah, you're done. I think there's certain things where it's like, you're just not, you're O.J. Simpson, you're done. No one collects O.J. Simpson. Maybe they do. But I think for Griffey, that's where I feel comfortable. I feel he'd have to do something he'd have to do one of those really extreme things for it to be like, boom, done. Mm-hmm. And then you factor in, okay, drugs, alcohol, DUIs, things like that. I think you can survive all of those things if it's not constant. Now, in performance enhancing drugs, that is a whole other conversation. Because there's a lot more. I personally own a Barry Bonds card as one of his rookie cards, and I love it, and I'm very happy to have it, and I have no qualms about it. I think, and I will maintain, and this could become another discussion, so I won't go there, but it all depends, and that's one of those circular arguments, but it all depends on the player, the sport, the period of time. You need to set the table properly for that discussion, and I think that you can even be speaking. Barry Bonds is still very collected. Jose Canseco is still collected. We all love Jose Canseco. I love Jose Canseco. My kid has that Bash Brothers, Castellano poster in his room like I did. I went and bought one. He has it in there along with Bo Jackson. He's dialed in, right? I think it has to be something. You have to hurt another human being. You have to harm a child before you really see, because that's one of those things where it's like you don't even exist anymore. People don't buy your cards. You can't even give them away. the prospecting's dangerous enough as it is. You throw that stuff in the mix, it makes it almost, yeah. So Wander Franco, and I had one. I sold his card like a year before all that stuff happened, thankfully. It makes you nervous about that. You got to hope the kids aren't all like that. You got to do your due diligence, but you're never going to know.
Right. Yep, exactly. I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think of a guy like LeBron, right? He said some political stuff and things like that, and that seemed divisive for a minute, but then people move on to the next thing. So I don't think even something like that sticks. I think, like you said, it has to be a repeated pattern of, lack of morals, lack of values, just unwise decision making and things like that, and you kind of feel like, right? So I collect Peyton and I collect Breeze and, folks like that. And I feel very, that makes you feel connected to them. And you always feel like you associate with people who are most like you. Right. And I obviously don't know Drew Brees or Peyton Manning personally, let's say, but I feel like, they're good family people, they're great fathers to their kids and things like that. I'm sure we all sin, right? That's part of us as humans.
The way it is.
Right. And so, no one's perfect, but at the end of the day, I just feel confident that they're not going to do anything stupid like the examples that you gave to, cause that to happen, where one day I just get up and I'm like, well, geez, I can't believe he did that. There it goes. I want to no longer associate with him because of that. So
I'll be perfectly honest. I have a couple Kobe's and I love these Kobe cards I have, right? But I read a few books on Phil Jackson, the Lakers, Kobe, all of it. And while I feel like he turned his life around, he changed the perception. He was a good father. He was a good husband after that. A good man of is a faith. One of the things that drew me to him is that he went to Catholic Mass before he got on the helicopter with his daughter, and they both received confession and everything, communion and confession. That was really cool to me as a Catholic. I was like, that's super cool. That's what really kind of got me really dialed into him even more so. But the stuff that happened in Colorado still bothers me as a father of a daughter. That bothers me, and it causes me pause to buy more of his cards. I'm not gonna lie. And Michael Jordan gambled, but as far as we know, none of that kind of stuff happened. And there's nothing. I have nothing against Kobe collectors. Nothing against. I mean, his legacy is pretty strong. I think the good outweighs the bad. But that little part right there makes me feel a little bit hypocritical, just a little bit. That's a small amount, but there's a little bit there that, I don't know. So it's a very, very good question. Very good. That's an actually incredible question.
It is.
Great.
It is.
We could talk for an hour about this.
No, it's true. And just kind of one last kind of personal example. What was it? 10 years ago, Hulk Hogan had the scandal, to bring wrestling into it, right? Where he used the N-word, and that created a lot of divide, obviously. It's not acceptable and things like that. And I obviously wasn't into wrestling cards at the time. I was aware of Hulk Hogan and what happened and things like that. But from what I understand, people kind of soured on him for a while because of that. But then, he, as you mentioned, he repented. He's a born-again Christian. That whole sort of thing. And he's kind of repaired his image because of that. And again, that using that word has no place in society. We definitely want to make that clear. But I think there's just different levels where if you harm a child or if you murder someone or something like that, where, hey, that's a one and done kind of thing. You're done.
You're kind of, having children,
Yep.
We'll leave that alone. Yeah. There's no. Well, that was really great. Hey, Drake, what a great, thought-provoking, a little bit deep at the end, but very good nonetheless. I think ending on that note is good, actually. It's a proper ending. Collecting cards can be so fun. It can be so innocent, but people are spending a lot of money on cards these days, and you should be doing it fiscally responsibly. Be providential with your finances. Use good sense. Never over leverage, but always have the collateral to get yourself out if you are going to do that. Always. But you got to think about, you're not just buying the piece of cardboard, you're buying the person in a way. You're buying a piece of their brand, a piece of their decision making that's attached to that. And it's going to change because you're going to get, everybody's going to have a lot of the opinions that we have. There's going to be a lot of fathers out there. They're going to be like, nope. Even if there's like a small, just a small hint of a concern or accusation or something, it's going to be trouble these days. So yes, collecting retired players is great. Collecting players that are no longer with us is even better. But people are finding out stuff these days. So who the heck knows? All I know is, Drake, you're not perfect. I know I'm not perfect. That's why we have our faith and all that. But I think with time, if you see a person, change who they are and try to get better, and you can see that throughout time tells you everything. Then it's real, and maybe there's something to it. But ultimately, you're always going to take that risk because we're all human beings. We're buying cards of human beings. So with that, Drake, thanks for joining me tonight. Or, well, not joining me. Thanks for being together and having a show. So used to doing these interviews. This has been fun. Pick 6, episode number 4. We're going to find Apple Podcasts. We're going to find a way to get those up there, and we'll let you know. But comment below, questions, anything. We've had a lot of heavy conversations and topics. We'd love to hear what you think, how you would answer some of these questions if you were Drake or myself, or what you think about all these things. We'd love to hear about that. Please don't burn yourself or anybody else around you while you listen to the episode. Drake, travel safely once again, and answer his trivia question down there in the comments as well. Hopefully you're doing that using Google.
Yeah, yes, exactly. Thank you, DPZ. Hope everybody listening has a very happy Easter. Remember the reason for the season. And thank you all for joining, and we'll talk next time.
All right. Take care, everybody.